The foul came first, a little hold on the block. But then came the whistle everyone in the arena heard differently, a technical. Dead ball contact, the kind of whistle that feels almost out of place until you remember this was Fever versus Lynx, a matchup that always seems to crackle with tension. And then there was Lexi Hull, standing there, jaw set, caught in the middle of another storm with Kayla McBride. Anyone watching couldn't help but feel a flashback to the last time these two faced off, when McBride's elbow connected square with Hull's face, and somehow, in the twisted logic of officiating, Hull got penalized. Fans walked away from that night furious, demanding justice that never came. But on this night, the rematch told a different story. Hull wasn't the one staggering. She was the one delivering the highlight, and this time, it felt personal. Indiana's 83-72 win over Minnesota wasn't just another box score. It was redemption layered with grit, resilience, and the kind of performance that left both fans and critics buzzing. The Fever closed their regular season with an exclamation point, 3 straight wins and a playoff ticket punch despite having one of the most battered rosters in the league. To really grasp why this win mattered so much, you have to understand what they've survived to even be standing here. The injury list reads like sabotage. Caitlin Clark's rookie campaign was supposed to be the heartbeat of this year, but a groin injury turned her into a permanent name on the medical sheet. Sophie Cunningham tore her MCL, Sydney Coulson's ACL gave out, Chloe Beebe couldn't keep her knee healthy, Aari McDonald fractured her foot. Put those names together, and you have a lineup that could compete with anyone in the WNBA. Instead, all of them were in street clothes. There's no playbook for losing half your rotation in a single season. For most franchises, it would have been the obituary of their year. And then came the crushing blow. Caitlin Clark was done. Not for a week, not for the stretch run, but for the season. That press release cut deep. Fans in Indiana and Iowa alike felt like someone had pulled the air out of the arena. Clark wasn't just a scorer. She was a cultural lightning rod, the reason this team had become nationally relevant again. Her absence could have been the breaking point. But instead of collapsing, the Fever shifted. They stopped waiting for a savior and decided to be their own answer. That's when Kelsey Mitchell rose. She didn't just step up. She detonated. Night after night, she scored over 20, finishing the season as the most productive scorer in Fever history. She surpassed Tamika Catching's single-season marks, carved her way past doubles and traps, and became the face of this playoff push. You could see it in her eyes. No hesitation, no shrinking from the weight. She drove left, crossed over, floated to the rim like a blur, and laid it in while defenses clung to her jersey. With Clark out, Mitchell didn't just carry the offense, she became the offense. Aaliyah Boston balanced that load with her own steady dominance. 15 points a night, rebounding records shattered, and the presence of a center who feels immovable in the paint. Over the final stretch, she averaged more than 8 boards a game, securing possessions Indiana had no business winning. Boston wasn't flashy about it. She was reliable, the anchor of a team that desperately needed one. When lineups collapsed and rotations shifted nightly, she was the constant. Her rebounding became the heartbeat of the defense, and her calm inside presence gave Indiana a chance every single night. It wasn't just the stars, though. That's what made this run feel different. Bench players, hardship signings, names fans barely knew, all turned into contributors. Odyssey Sims, pulled back into the league when Indiana's injuries reached crisis level, came off the bench with fire. Against Minnesota, she poured in 15 points and played like she'd been waiting years for this chance. Aerial Powers, once seen as a stopgap, buried back-to-back threes that swung momentum and silenced the Lynx's late push. Natasha Howard filled every gap, defending, scoring, rebounding, quietly holding the front court together so Boston didn't have to do it alone. The Minnesota game crystallized all of it. From the tip, Indiana played like a team that refused to be dismissed. A 10-0 run to start stunned the Lynx and forced an early timeout. The Fever's defense swarmed, their shots fell, and instead of Minnesota dictating pace, it was Indiana setting the tempo. By halftime, the Fever were shooting nearly 60% from the floor, a blistering pace against one of the league's best defenses. But it wasn't just the scoreboard that had people talking afterward. It was one play, one crossover that became the symbol of Indiana's late-season surge. Lexi Hull versus Kayla McBride. Weeks earlier, McBride had bloodied Hull's face with an elbow and somehow escaped the villain role when refs tagged Hull with the technical. Fans felt robbed. Hull looked like the victim of both bad luck and worse officiating. But in this rematch, with the Fever already buzzing, Hull finally got her chance. The ball swung to her at the top of the key. McBride pressed up, hand high, body leaning. Hull gave a hesitation dribble, quick to her left. McBride lunged, lost balance, and in an instant, her legs tangled. She staggered backward, helpless, as Hull's move sent her crumbling. The crowd erupted. Phones flew into the air. Social media detonated with replays. This wasn't just a highlight. It was payback in real time. "Karma!" Indiana fans shouted. "Justice," others said. To Hull, it was basketball. But to everyone who'd carried that frustration from weeks earlier, it was redemption. What made it sweeter was everything else Hull did. With Sophie Cunningham gone, she had become Indiana's only healthy wing, forced into heavy minutes against elite scorers. Instead of cracking, she delivered her best performances yet, dropping 23 points in the previous Lynx matchup and locking up Minnesota's guards this time around. She contested shots, jumped passing lanes, and made McBride's night a nightmare beyond the viral ankle breaker. For a player often cast as a role filler, Hull looked indispensable, and that's what Indiana itself has become. A team built on being underestimated, constantly slapped with doubts, but somehow always rising higher when the pressure is heaviest. The Fever have been cast as the underdog all year, yet here they are, finishing with their first winning record since 2015. 9 years of frustration, of rebuilding that never stuck, of missing the playoffs entirely. And now, at 24-20, they stand as proof that resilience can turn into culture. Through it all, Caitlin Clark hasn't disappeared. Cameras caught her waving her arms like a coach, signaling plays, calling out coverages, even laughing with refs. She's still present, still vocal, still making sure her teammates feel her energy. Even in street clothes, she hasn't let go of her leadership role. And when she returns, she'll be walking back into a team hardened by fire, one with chemistry, playoff minutes under their belt, and belief that no setback can keep them down. For Coach Stephanie White, this has been the vindication of her philosophy. Be where your feet are, she's told her team again and again. Focus on the moment, on who's here, not who isn't. That mantra has reshaped the season. Instead of panicking over missing stars, the Fever embraced what was left. White's insistence on work ethic, on energy, on hunger, has created a culture that feels sustainable beyond this year. This isn't a team sneaking into the playoffs by accident. It's a foundation being laid for something much bigger. The Fever weren't satisfied with survival. That's the part that makes their run dangerous heading into the playoffs. Other teams in this position might have celebrated just making it this far. For Indiana, the tone has shifted. They've won 3 straight, capped by knocking off the league's top seed, and now they believe they can do more than show up in the postseason. They can make noise. And so the season closes with a final statement. Indiana isn't the team people thought it was back in June. They aren't a one-star operation that dies without Caitlin Clark. They aren't just a rebuilding project stuck in limbo. They are a squad that reinvented itself mid-season, that turned adversity into fuel, that found new stars in Mitchell and Boston, new weapons in Powers and Sims, and new heart in Hull. The Fever didn't just beat Minnesota. They announced they're here. They've broken through the ghosts of the past 9 years. They've rewritten their narrative, and now they're stepping into the playoffs not as underdogs, but as dangerous contenders with nothing to lose. And when fans look back on this season, they'll remember a crossover, a stumble, and a roar from the Indiana crowd. Lexi Hull dropped Kayla McBride, and in that moment, the Fever dropped their old identity too.